Welcome to Auditory Precision, and today we're going to talk about noise reduction and how it can help or hinder a patient. And the first thing that I want to go over is basically the SII model. Now, we want to bring intelligibility to the best of our ability back to the patient. And so ANSI standards, American National Standard Institute, does follow the SII model, which SII stands for Speech Intelligibility Index, where it's a series of zeros and ones being the highest to gain the most benefit for clarity. And there's a couple things that have to take place, two in particular. One, the speaker that you're conversing with, being 1 meter away, does not speak any louder than 10 decibels over normal speech. The second one is very important, and it follows what's called the 15 decibel rule, and that speech must be 15 decibels louder than noise for the hearing aid to be able to differentiate between the two. Okay? So basically what this is doing is if I'm speaking to somebody in a restaurant, as long as the noise that's in the background is 15 decibels less than my voice, the hearing aid can do a pretty good job by reducing noise, but keeping my speech where it is. And how it does this is that my speech has a pattern to the sound wave. It's a complex pattern because I have pure tones and noise. My vowels coming out of my vocal cords will add some amount of noise to my speech, but noise in general has no pattern. It's just a cacophony of random waves. And as long as there's this 15 decibel difference, the hearing aid can basically tell the difference between the two. Sadly, most of the time, we're dealing with my speech in a restaurant, and the noise that's in the background is pretty close to being about the same level. And what the hearing aid does at this point is it tries to modulate it as a whole. If there's any spikes at any short phase, it'll try to bring that back down, and if there's any dips, it'll try to bring it back up. Kind of like automatic gain control, but more along the lines of like compression and expansion. But it modulates it to try to keep it as steady as possible. Now, the thing that we have to understand is that noise reduction is noise reduction. It does not make music sound better, and it doesn't help with intelligibility of speech. It can actually hinder it when it's modulating speech along with the noise. So for noise reduction to work to its best ability, we need to have our speech 15 decibels louder than noise. So let's see if this would help our patient. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run an acceptable noise level. And it was a great seminar done by IHS in 2005 in Orlando. They kind of went over some studies of what this is showing. And to do an acceptable noise level, I'm going to put a patient in the sound booth, and I'm going to get their MCL. And let's say I had my patient get an MCL of 60. I'm going to have two speakers in the sound booth, and one speaker is going to be presented talking either by me or recorded speech at 60. And what I'm going to slowly do is have my other speaker present noise, and I'm going to keep increasing. Once I increase the noise to a certain decibel where the patient says, I would hate to be in this environment, this is uncomfortable for me, I would stop. And if I could, I want a low score at the end of this. So say I was able to bring up my noise to 40 decibels. The patient might have not been able to understand what I was saying, but the noise wasn't too loud until 40. And they said, that's it, I wouldn't want to stay here. I'm going to minus 40 from my 60, and that will get me 20. Okay, and that will land me right about here on this chart. The lower the number, the better they do in noise. So say this patient was able to handle 15 decibels. That would bring me to about 10. And we're going to go over what this means in just a second. But what I do find and what IHS found, I should say, is that we have a success rate that kind of goes like this when we're dealing with noise. Once noise reaches 15 decibels or louder, I see a decrease in success. If I can keep noise 15 decibels or less, then we see this spike in success here. Okay, so say somebody has a hearing aid and they have a gain of 40. As long as noise is staying below 55, right, because we're adding our gain to it, they're going to do okay. All right, everybody's different, but that's what this basically shows. Now, what this shows is my score. And if I have somebody who is extremely sensitive to noise, and I can only subtract 10 from this, which would be 50. I mean, we're off the chart here. On this side of this chart, these people focus on noise, okay? And what we've seen here is that when we did 50 listeners, we had this strange enigma right around 12. But for the most part, we saw two different groups that would start. We would have Group A and Group B. And Group A on this side, they focus on intelligibility. They say, I don't care how loud the restaurant is. I just want to understand a little bit better. B says, I'm not going to any restaurant unless it's quiet. So noise reduction helps with Group B patients. And depending on how sensitive they are to it, we want to increase noise reduction to our best of our ability. And even counsel these patients that they might not want to go to noisy restaurants because it'll never be comfortable to them. But studies show Group A that can handle a lot of noise because they had a low score with their acceptable noise level. Noise reduction won't help them out at all. And if we put on noise reduction and we're in an environment which they can handle, where noise would be just as loud as speech, if not louder, and I'm just going to be utilizing modulation instead of separation, we might as well not even use this speech reduction on Group A. Because again, noise reduction is just doing that, reduction of noise. It's not making music sound crisper, and it's not helping with intelligibility. But definitely something that you want to take into account, that when you have a very sensitive patient who's very sensitive to noise, not only do we want to utilize noise reduction to the best of our ability, but this will be a patient that should be counseled about their ability to never really handle a loud restaurant as well as others.